Welcome. Should I put on my J-Cat? I will. My sweet wife, clean up the J-Cat. Not actually working today. I was actually messing around. Rob and I did some How Red Is Your Neck S10 stuff. And it's dark outside. So, walk around the car, listen to some music, and I'll be right back. Buenos noches. Okay, before we get started, today's story time. Before we get started, there's a lava lamp over there. And speaking of lava lamps, there are three young ladies that I want to say good morning, aloha to. Well, not really good morning, but aloha to. They are Brian's granddaughters, Ary, Aubree, and Hayley. Hello, girls. Aloha. Ary has a lava lamp. She sent me a picture. And Aubree has a really tall bubble lamp, which is, both those things are way cooler than my lava lamp. Kind of looking to get one of those bubble lamps. Anyway, I just want to say hi, girls, and aloha. And I don't know. Hi, Brian. Thanks for sending me those emails. Off to story time. So today's story time, it's going to be a two-part story time. I'll set you guys up right here. And now you're taller than me. All right, eyes right here. I can see you. Okay, hats off, it's too hot. So today's story time. Oh yeah, by the way, I got the blower snout off the car. So I will actually do the wiring instead of like attempting to drive it. You win. Okay, so here we are. Story time today. Two parts. One is a Mopar story about how I got my 70 Charger RT. And the second one kind of falls in line with that, but it has to do with some vehicles most of you are going to be familiar with. So I worked at an auto parts store. You remember that? It was a really cool one. Had some girls that I worked with that were great parts people. I ended up leaving, and they would still call me, and I would still call in. So I think I told you guys that they actually got me a job with somebody else. While that was going on, I had a roommate, really good friend of mine. His name was Chris, and we all had like a bunch of 67 to 72 Chevy trucks, and he had an old Ford truck and some other things, and we just kind of had a community thing going on where we could just take any vehicle we wanted. We were good friends like that, and one day, Christopher and I were rolling down, I think, Fairview in Meridian, Idaho. And there used to be a wrecking yard at, it wasn't Eagle, Cloverdale, I think. It used to be called AMT, Automotive Marine and Truck Salvage Yard. And in the front, they used to have cars that they would buy or fix up, and they would stick them in the front. This is a long time ago. This is like early 90s. And I seen this 70 Charger sitting down there with a for sale sign on it. And I think Chris and I were both in one of my Chevys, and we went rolling by, went down and looked at this Charger, and the guy comes out who worked there, and he's kind of scruffy, and I said, how much you want for this Charger? And he said, well, I don't really want to sell it. I want to get rid of it. I don't like it. It's a Dodge. And I said, well, you want to trade for it? And he goes, yeah, I'd love to trade for this thing. Get rid of this piece of junk. And then we opened the hood, and it had a 440, and it was a pistol grip 4-speed, and it was kind of a rough old girl, but it had like a tarantula intake. The carb was kind of sideways, had some mean headers on it. He fired it up, and it had a big choppy cam, had like CUDA AAR style exhaust that came out and like were slash cuts in front of the rear tires, had Western mags on it. It was pretty mean. He had got that thing and been sitting for a long time. It was an old hot rod, old muscle car. It's kind of a silver blue color with a white top. And it was a decent car. But I said, so you want to trade for it? He's like, yeah, I'd love to trade for it. I said, well, what do you like? You interested in an old Chevy truck? He said, no, I'm not into Chevrolets. And I was like, well, that only leaves one, unless you're an import guy. He goes, no, I like Fords. And I said, Fords, huh? And he goes, I'm really looking for an old Ford pickup. And I said, is that right? He said, yeah, I'd like to have one. I looked at my buddy Chris and I said, well, we just happen to have a Ford truck. He said, really? And I said, yep, it's blue. I think it was a 78 F-150. And it had a 400M in it, I think. And we had just done an Edelbrock cam and carbon intake set to it. And it was fair. That was a pretty new. That was pretty recent. Edelbrock had just put that out, so we put that in there, and it ran pretty good. And the truck was pretty clean, but it was just an old beater truck. It had, it was that dark Ford blue color, about the same color as these valve covers. And so he said, well, I'd be interested in looking at that. So we went back to the house, grabbed the Ford, drove it in and parked it in front. And he come out and he was mad. He was real mad. He come out here, he goes, I told you I'd trade for a truck, but I'm not adding any money. And we said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm not doing a trade for you if you think that I'm going to take money on top of this Charger to buy that Ford truck. He goes, I like that truck, but that's a little bit too rich for my blood. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this piece of junk Ford, I can't wait to get rid of. I want that Charger. I would have given him money and the truck for the Charger, but this guy didn't know that. He thought we were going the other way. And so we played it off real cool, and I said, no, we'll just do a swap. He's like, are you sure? Because I'm getting a better end of the deal on this. He said, don't be bringing that thing back when it doesn't run. And I said, no, it'll be all right. And down the street was, I think the Napa Auto Parts was over, it was in the old location over off of, it's over by the racetrack, by Meridian Speedway, one block over. And my buddy Jim Neely worked there. And I went over there and visited Jim, and we bought like a box of those clear plastic fuel filters. I think we bought like 12 of them. And we ended up putting 2 in line and fired that thing up. And I think we went through almost the entire case of fuel filters because the tank, it was plugging the tank up. This thing had an old electric Carter fuel pump in the back, and it would plug the fuel filters up. And we would just stop and knock them out and change a filter and go a couple more miles. And we finally got home and got the thing cleaned up. And I think I ended up putting a clutch in it. And it was a real legit numbers matching. That 440 matched it. The A833 was in it, was numbers matching. But someone had pulled the Dana 60 out of it because it would have had a Dana 60 and had an 8 3/4 in it. But it had like, I think it had 254 gears or something. It was a one-legger. I don't know what happened to that car. I think I gave it to Chris in a trade. It was his truck after all. But I had the car for a long time, and then I traded it to Chris for something else, and then he ended up, I think he moved to Medford, Oregon, and I think he took the Charger with him, because I didn't have any place to keep it. And I mean, let's face it, I mean, it was fun, but I was more into like, 57s and stuff like that, and old hot rods, and didn't really have any place for it. So I think when he left, he took that. But that leads to the second story. So old Christopher and I had one of my trucks, and we had the Charger, and we had, I don't remember, like a big international farm truck and a bunch of other stuff. We ended up working for a guy that had a body shop out in South Boise, and we got picked up because he ended up picking up a contract with his business partner to put together 49 through 54 Chevy pickups. And they were for this clothing company, and the idea was to get one of these done and built, and they were going to take it down to Atlanta, Georgia for the Olympics. And we had no idea, so the business partner went out and bought, he got some money up front, he went out and bought like a couple of these trucks and some other things, and I had the idea of, doing like a Mustang 2 front end to it and a small block with an automatic, because the idea was the store wanted these trucks to be used as delivery vehicles or promotional vehicles for their store brand, and we were going to paint them all the same color, and they were all going to have like air conditioning and power steering and power brakes, and they were going to be, kind of hot rods, but so guys could get in and go. So Chris and I built the first one, and the guy did the body work and painted it. It was painted a real like dark blue, kind of a cool truck, and they paid like, I think for that first truck back then, this is like 90. And I can't remember. It was that Olympics for Georgia. I had to think about this. It might have been 96 Olympics. I don't know. I have to go look. But they ended up giving us, I think they gave the money guy like 35 or 40,000 or something at that time for that truck, one truck. And we had a contract to build 200 of them. And so it went down to the Olympics in Atlanta, and that truck was unveiled as the company's, their new line of clothes and new line of whatever. And we had already were working on 3 or 4 other trucks at the time, and at that time the guy who had the money, and they paid us up front, and we had money on it, he said that he didn't have any money left. So my buddy Chris and I were putting our own money, and so was the guy in the body shop. We were putting our own money into these projects just to keep them going because they were paying so much. We figured we could build a truck for around 10 or 11 grand, all in, painted, motor, tranny, everything back then. Totally stock interiors, totally everything, and that was what we were going to do. So that was the plan, was to get that done. And so we were putting money into him, and with the promise of him, paying us back, and then we would take whatever money we put into him, and that would move into the next truck after we got it paid back. We were just rolling it that way. But he went out and bought like a bunch of other cars and sunk all the money in, thinking it would be an investment and make us money. Well, that didn't end well, and the contract was defaulted on. And the company was forced to change their plan for what they did with the old Navy trucks. And you guys might remember them. Same trucks, but instead of them being actually on the road and what they were intended to be used for, they ended up becoming static displays with no engines and transmissions and just shells stuck in the stores. But that's right. My buddy Chris and I built the first one. Probably the first 4. And they actually drove. I have a story about the first one when I took it out on the test drive with the guy, the owner, and the rep from Old Navy when I took him out. I'll tell you that story later. It was really funny because I was going to be super mean to that truck. If it was going to break, it was going to break right there with me. And it did. Oh boy, did it. That was hilarious. Anyway, have a good weekend. Happy story time. See you Monday. Quiz. Don't forget, I need all your stuff in by Tuesday. Aloha. Aloha, girls.